your host, Temple, and this podcast is all about connecting you with some of the coolest STEM professionals. Our guest today is a STEM professional who helps connect youth, adults, and different companies and communities with STEM. She's a chemist, she's incredible, she's known as the classy chemist. So today I'm plugging you in with Dr. Yasmine Daniels.
Hi.
I am so excited to finally kind of talk to you. We've talked before through social media. I've been on some of your Zooms and really fun things back during the beginning of quarantine. So I'm glad to have you as a guest on my podcast.
Yes, I'm so happy to be here. I'm so happy you reached out. I've been following your journey for so long, and it's so incredible to really see all the amazing things that you do. I know this is a podcast where you're interviewing me, but I just want to let folks know that you are doing the thing. You're doing your thing, and it makes me so proud as a STEM professional, knowing all of the things that you have done and that you continue to do to pull others behind you up with you. So it's really exciting, and it's such an amazing and proud moment for me to
Thank
see.
you. So it is an honor to have you on here. Let's go ahead and just get straight into the interview, into the questions. You have 3 different STEM professions. Can you tell us a bit about each? Because we know what a chemist is, we know that what a professor is, but that last one kind of confused me.
Okay, sure. Yeah, and it's interesting that you say that because when I was in graduate school, I actually did not know what an industrial hygienist was. So I didn't learn about it until well after I graduated, and I was started looking for a job. But we can start from the beginning. You said chemist first, I think professor and industrial hygienist. So I am a chemist, so I do have a PhD in chemistry. Did not know I wanted to be a chemist when I was growing up. I just always knew that I was pretty good at science. And so with that background, typically what you're pushed into is medicine. And so I actually did that. I went into all of the pre-med programs in college. And one summer, I actually shadowed a physician, a pediatrician. And it was that summer that I made my decision that I did not want to go into medicine. Sorry for all the MDs, but it was just not for me. I don't deal with certain things that you deal in medicine, like germs and things. I don't deal with that stuff very well. So I quickly decided that I needed to move somewhere else. And luckily for me, the program that I was in that summer allowed me to do both physician shadowing and research. So it was a teaching hospital. And so they had a dual program. So in the morning, I did the shadowing. In the afternoon, I was able to work in a lab. I worked in a monkey lab. It was kind of cool. A monkey lab. So it was a lab with primates where they basically looked at a lot of their diets, and they tried to determine what was causing their metabolic syndrome, which is a whole other topic in conversation. So I was a student, a college student. I think I was a sophomore. So I didn't really have too much research experience at that time. So I was doing some basic stuff like feeding monkeys cookie dough. So it wasn't anything harmful. I mean, to some people that might be harmful, but I didn't think it was harmful. But anyway, I digress. So I figured out that summer that I wanted to do research, and I ended up joining the MARC MBRS program at my school, which is a Minority Access to Research Careers program funded by NIH. There are lots of those different types of programs. McNair is another one. And when you're in college and a minority student, if you're interested in research, these programs provide so many resources, including financial, but other resources like support. I had access to tutors for chemistry, and believe it or not, I did have a tutor for organic chemistry, even though I'm a professor now. And so, I think that, being a chemist actually opened up so many doors for me, and we can get into that later on if you'd like. But so I ended up being a chemist because that's the research that I sort of was drawn to. And after that, I ended up going to doing a postdoc. I taught for a little bit. I realized I really liked teaching. I didn't necessarily want to go into teaching full time. So I'm not a full professor. I'm an adjunct professor, which just means that I teach part time. So I pick up courses usually in the evenings or on the weekends, and I have a full-time job doing something else. And so I do that as my professorship or my professor job. And the third one is the industrial hygiene. So when people think of industrial hygiene, automatically think it's like a dental hygienist or someone who picks up trash or something like that. A hygienist, someone who cleans. We do clean technically, but we do it in the occupational realm. So basically, we ensure that folks who are working in, employees are not exposed to occupational hazards, so health hazards, physical hazards, things like that. And we work to sort of anticipate, control, provide assistance to employers to ensure that their employees are not exposed. So, for example, if you or a family member or a friend, someone is working in a factory that makes nail polish, for example, we take for granted, right? We have a bottle of nail polish. Where does it come from? It's
Right.
in a factory. You have all of these workers mixing huge drums of chemicals, and these chemicals, are pretty volatile because when you open a bottle of nail polish, you can smell it immediately. So it starts to go into the air. And so oftentimes these chemicals have other types of hazards associated with them. So they're flammable. They may be corrosive, which means they can burn you.
Yeah.
Um, so who protects these people when they work with those things? They're not working with little tiny bottles that we have in our cabinets. They're working with like gallons
Yeah.
of these things, and so that could pose a great hazard to them if they inhale too much of it. If it spills on them, imagine a big drum just spilling on you, right? So what happens? And so industrial hygiene is ensuring that there are um, parameters in place to prevent workers from being exposed to those types of hazards in the workplace. So a typical day for me could be something, and this is when I used to actually go out and do investigations. So an industrial hygienist could go out with a sampling kit. So there's still a lot of science in there. So you have your tools, you have your sampling kit, and you take samples of employees while they're working on a typical day. And you can take that back to the lab and you can assess it and you can measure exactly what type of air that they were exposed to if they were inhaling those things. You actually have media that's capable of taking samples of the air while the employees are working. And I mean, there's more to it as far as like, how do you put the media on them? How long do you run it for? What's the rate of air that's going through the media? There's a lot of different details, and that's the science,
Yeah.
industrial hygiene. So it's a really, really cool profession. If people are interested, even just a little bit, I would highly encourage them to look into it a little bit more. You really just need a science background, and you can go, as far into it as you want to. So that was a really long response.
I mean, it's a really a great response because in industrial hygienist, you say industrial hygienist, when you're doing that, people don't really think about that. Like you don't think about that in a career. You're like, oh, I like STEM, but I want to be a chemist. But there's so many things that could go into that, and that's what it's all about for people to be exposed to more careers that they really don't know about or know exist. Because when I tell you, I didn't know this existed, and
Yep.
it's really interesting because I was in fifth grade, I think, and I did a science fair project, and I feel like this was very much industrial hygienist where I had tested the mole in different parts of my school and compared it to the mole in my house and compared it to the mole at my mom's office building. And I realized that our school's air was not that clean for all those students who are still very much growing. We were fourth, fifth, and sixth graders. We were still growing,
Mhm.
and checked the air quality of it and saw that it wasn't the best
Yep.
for us. So really, I've taken this, but I didn't know what it was. So it's
Yep.
good to finally have a title for that.
Yep. Yeah, and industrial hygiene definitely crosses over, environmental health. So it's like an intersectionality, if that's even a thing, of occupational health. There's a little bit of public health, but we really focus on, the industrial hygienist on the workers. But a lot of people from those backgrounds work with us. In my own experience, I've actually had um, an encounter with a facility that had an explosion. And
Wow.
sometimes, as an industrial hygienist, you get called out because you work with the investigative team. So you'll have like the police department there. You may have paramedics, the fire department. And so it was an explosion, and the fire department had already gotten there before I had, and they put some foam suppressant all over the place. So I walked into a building that it was filled with foam, and it looked like it could have been a party, right? But they actually did that because the chemicals that the employees were working with were so flammable that they didn't want it to continue to, create an explosion. So they had the fire suppressant, and when I got there, everything was already wet. So as an industrial hygienist, I couldn't take samples at that point. They had already evacuated all of the employees, but my job is to still piece together what had gone wrong, what could have been put in place, work with the employer. And I work actually in enforcement. So in industrial hygiene, usually there's enforcement and consultation.
Mhm.
Consultants work with consultation, so they typically help. Not that enforcement people don't, but consultation, usually you hire someone as a consultant because you want them to fix your program. when you have enforcement in the building, it's usually a little too late. So enforcement usually comes in and to see if you're up to code, right? So you think of like a health inspector. Sometimes people like to think of it that way. If they come into your restaurant, they're not really coming to tell you, oh, make sure you're putting this cooking this fish at the right temperature. They're coming to make sure that you did it. And if you didn't, there might be a fine
Yeah.
attached to that. So that's kind of like usually the difference. But yeah, so hopefully I answered your question as far as like what exactly we do. And yeah, I'm more than happy to answer more questions.
My question about all three of your professions, which one do you like the most?
That's a tricky question. Let's see, which one I like the most.
Yeah. If you had to like, oh, I have to quit my other two jobs, which one are you choosing to be that one that you're doing it until you retire?
Well, see, the nice thing about what I do and the reason that I do what I do is because it does allow me to do all three. So I don't know that I would want to teach full time only because of the personal commitment that it takes. I know I don't have that, at least not at this point in my life. And so, but I do know that I love teaching. So, I mean, there's a reason why I kind of stick to each of them. So, I want to teach, but I can't do it full time. So, I decided, okay, I'll do adjunct teaching. So, as far as answering the question, it wouldn't be teaching because if I were to do teaching full time, it would really conflict with a lot of the things I do in my life.
Yeah.
So, let's take teaching out of that. Not that I don't love teaching. So, let's put that out there. And so, being maybe like a chemist, like a scientist versus being an industrial hygienist where I do more like occupational safety. Um, I was a chemist for a while. So after I got my PhD, I worked as a bench chemist doing research with nanoparticles. And I liked it, but I thought that it became a little mundane. So I was like in a lab, mixing things, interacting with test tubes and a triple beam balance or whatever it was that I was using at the time, writing protocols, pumping out data, churning out data, looking at data on spreadsheets and creating all these plots and graphs and things. That was nice, but I didn't know if it was fulfilling for me. I felt like I wanted to kind of connect more with people. I wanted to see a little bit more of the immediate impact of the work that I was doing. Because, in science, and there's nothing wrong with this, because I definitely value and appreciate a lot of the researchers out there, and I still use a lot of their work to this day
Mhm.
in industrial hygiene. But just personally, some things that I didn't feel like I was fulfilled in connecting with people. I like to connect with people. I like to feel like I'm showing them how to do something. Maybe it's the teacher in me. I like to like walk them through processes. I like to show them the watered down version of something that's really complex. And that's what I do it when I teach. And that's why I really don't want to go away from teaching, because I feel like I want to be able to continue to add value to students' lives, because that's what
Yes.
I experienced going through the process of, my collegiate education. And that's why I went into chemistry, because I had that person who was there. And I want to continue to do that for students. And so going back to being a chemist, I feel like I moved away from being a full-time chemist because it didn't allow me to have that level of fulfillment. And
Yeah.
jumping into industrial hygiene, I feel like I'm still a little bit in the science. I do a little bit of the science, but I interact with people on a daily basis, and I talk to people. I can walk, I've walked onto like a job site where I've talked people away from a hazardous situation, which in real time saved their lives, and they were able to go back home to their families, maybe even the long term, because sometimes you're exposed to chemicals and they have um, like a chronic illness, right? Something that you don't see until years later. So these kinds of things give me way more fulfillment, I think, than you know mixing two things in a beaker and then waiting to see what happens or publishing it. And again, I'm not saying this to say that that work is irrelevant or that I didn't like it, but I needed that fulfillment. And
Mm.
for that reason, I guess industrial hygiene is the winner.
Okay, I feel like I knew that industrial hygienist was going to be the answer, but that was really good advice to give to somebody who may be struggling about what they want to choose for a career that they want to do, and especially in STEM, because as you get older, you learn more and more about these careers that you probably would have never heard about if you were in middle or high school when you started learning about science and being interested in as well.
Yep, exactly.
Okay, so I have a game that we're going to play. It is
Oh,
called Show and Tell.
okay.
And so the premises of the game is that I will be showing you a picture, and you're gonna tell me about this picture, okay?
Right. Okay. Okay. Is it a picture of me?
Yes.
Oh gosh.
It's
Okay.
not related to you, but yeah.
Okay. Let's go. Let's play. I'm ready. Oh boy, you dug the archives. Okay, so this is a picture of me in college. So a lot of people may or may not know. I've actually been posting about it more recently on my social media platforms, but I am a volleyball player. Volleyball, if you look really closely at that picture, you'll see I have a tattoo on my leg. So I used to live and breathe volleyball. I still kind of do, but I have more priorities now. But this is me in college. I used to be, not tooting my own horn, you can actually ask people. I held a lot of records. I was really good.
Mhm.
My school, we had a lot of good memories and championships that we won together. I used to jump really high. You saw my hands were all the way
Yeah,
up.
they were yeah.
I don't jump as high anymore, but it it really, I feel like volleyball made me the person that I am today, especially being, a chemist, doing all the different things that I do. Being a volleyball player, you had to be extremely organized when you were in school.
Yeah.
It's for any sport, but for me, mine was volleyball, obviously, because it's a very competitive thing to do to be an athlete, especially on the collegiate level. You have to ensure you're going to the gym, you're lifting weights, you're at practice, you're watching tape, you're traveling on weekends. Can you imagine being a STEM student doing
Okay.
that?
Here's picture number 2.
Oh gosh. Oh, okay. So this one is a little more recent. Well, not as recent, but you can see my hair looks very different here. So that was in 2014. And let's see. Okay, so that was in 2014, as it says at the top. So I was featured on as the cover of Miss Millennia magazine, and so it basically is a magazine that features exceptional women who are doing amazing things. And I got the cover that year because it was the year that I actually had launched my very first business. So I had a business called Nature's Chemist Treats. And so basically it was a play on words, and I like to do this play on words thing. As you can see, I have a book called Building My Self-Esteem um, in Science. So anyway, it was a company called Nature's Chemist Treats. And at that time, I was actually really into natural skin and hair care products. And being a chemist, obviously, I think maybe not even just a chemist, anyone who's interested in science probably has some kind of mixture at home that they've made, even if it's mixing shampoo and conditioner or mixing some oils, essential oils with something else for your scalp. And so I was really into that, and I was doing a lot of research. And I started making products really for like close friends and family. And my sister gave one of my products to her hairdresser, and she started using it in her salon. And she said to me, "You should really like go into business. This is really good stuff." And I mean, at that time, I was just kind of like, "This is just, a home project. What are you talking about?" And so she was my very first client. She ordered like, I think like 100 that she wanted to give away to her clients for like holiday. Um, and so that really was what started my entrepreneurship.
And for my last picture for show and tell, you kind of brought this up while you were talking, so I just want to.
What did I? Okay, let's see. Oh, there it is. Okay, so this is, as you can see, the middle character. I feel like I should have like a magnifying glass at my desk so I can show people the resemblance. But that's supposed to be me. So it's called Building My Self-Esteem in Science, and it is my very first book. It was actually a bestseller on Amazon, and it's a book about a group of friends, each of whom are interested in a particular aspect of STEAM. And so Building My Self-Esteem is a play on words. So it's spelled STEAM, which we all know is science, technology, engineering, art, and mathematics. And so each of these friends have an affinity to one of the aspects of STEAM, and they all work together to encourage the main character, who is in the middle. Her name's Charisma. They all work together to encourage her to continue to stick to her STEAM efforts, because she faces a lot of insecurities in STEAM and challenges, and there are several times where she feels like she wants to give up. So having these friends in her corner really does help. And they, at the end of the book, they do something extremely special for her that she was not expecting at all. So it's a really cool book for students. I feel like it's good for anybody of any age, but if you're interested in a reading level, it's usually, I would say the age range is like about 5 to 11. Um, It's a picture book. There are lots of very colorful, vibrant pictures in there. And it's a really positive and encouraging story. And there are some anecdotal stories in there of my own experience, although it is not a biography.
What is your way to kind of encourage youth to get into STEM, especially little Black girls who don't have a person who looks like them, whether with their curly hair, their dreads, or their locks? What is that way to encourage them? Because I always say that you have to be that first person to do it so you can influence the others that are after you.
Mhm. Yep, and I like that, and that's exactly what I would say too. The way that you can encourage is by just not sitting around, but doing something. If you feel like there's a need for something or there's a lack of something, be the person to make the change, and don't wait for someone else to do it, or for another group of people to acknowledge the fact that there's this thing lacking. If you're noticing that there's something, start to think about ways that you can brainstorm ideas, who you need to talk to, who you need to bring into the team. What can you do to actually make a difference to help encourage and inspire the next group of people coming after you? Because someone said to me one time, you just never know who's watching. And that really sit with me because I feel like there have been people who I've watched who have no idea that
Yeah.
they've helped me along the way. And I'm so grateful for them. And I honestly have not had the opportunity to reach out to every single person who's helped me along my journey. I wish I did have that time, because I know they would appreciate it as well. But you just never know who's watching you, and use every opportunity that you have as an opportunity to inspire someone else, even when you're not aware that they're watching you, because that's really what's going to make the difference. You don't have to be on a platform to make a difference. That's really important. You don't. It could be someone in your neighborhood, someone watching you walk down the street. I remember just seeing like a really nicely dressed African American woman walking down the street, thinking to myself, "Man, I just can't wait for till I grow up so I can have a really nice job, so I can be really nicely dressed too." That's inspiration, because that in the back of my mind, I'm working towards that moment in my life where I feel like I've attained this thing that I feel fulfilled from. And I'm not saying that to say being nicely dressed means success, but at least it gave me a little bit of a push. And so you just never know what it is that you're doing that's going to push the next person. But I encourage you to be your best self, because you never know who's watching.
I'm like, I'm not just all science. I'm really fun. I'm social. I love to go out. I go out like almost every weekend,
Mhm,
hanging out with my friends, just doing whatever, being outside.
mhm,
So that kind of represents how, oh, I can be all in this STEM and I don't have to have that nerd persona that people think scientists have to have.
mhm, mhm. Yep, I definitely agree. And I always try to ensure that people understand that that's who I am. So it really is about just being your true self. And I feel like it would be a disservice on my part to show people this professional, well put together person. Not to say I'm not always well put together outside of STEM, but I don't want people who are looking maybe up to me to be misled by a false perception of myself. So, in a lab, in an office, at a meeting, I am a professional. I do present myself as such. But I have no problem wearing my locks down. I don't feel the need to have to tie my hair back, because I've heard that before, believe it or not. If I want to go on vacation with my girls, I'm going to do that. And I'm going to show you that I'm on vacation. I mean, I will be discreet about the pictures I post and the videos I post, because it's not just for a professional concern, but I feel that these are the things that I want to focus on, the positive things. And this is not me criticizing anyone for posting anything online, but I think you should just be true and honest about who you are and what you want your message to be to everyone who's looking at you, and try to be as real as you can be. And if you start to put out a false pretense of who you are and what it is you're about, it'll show. People, they tend to see the authenticity in the person, and if that's not who you are, then don't do it. But if it is who you are, I encourage you to show them the full picture, because someone else looking at you might feel like, and this is, I think, a perception that a lot of youth have. Like you said earlier, you hinted to the fact that I mentor. I mentor Black and brown girls who are very young. And one of the things that I asked them when I initially started my program was, what does a scientist look like to you? Let's draw a scientist. and most of them drew a Caucasian older male. And that really sat with me. And I felt, I mean, I was a little offended because I'm a scientist, and why didn't no one draw me? Um, but I think that it's because of this perception that we have that a scientist should look like this, and a scientist should do these things. And if we are on in an online presence or platform presenting ourselves as scientists, and we have to be able to look and act like this. And if we do anything outside of that, it's probably going to be perceived as unprofessional or unkept. And I don't agree with that. So I feel like if you're being your true and authentic self, if it's something about your culture that you'd like to celebrate, then do it. I have no problem doing that about, for myself. And I try to be as equal with my posts and the presentation of myself with professional side of Dr. Daniels and also the fun side of Dr. Daniels, because you really need the full picture in order to thrive. And you'll definitely be burnt out if you are just all work, 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 work. You have to find an outlet. For me, it's volleyball, hanging out with friends, traveling. You like to go out with your friends and you guys like to party, and you're young. Um, Enjoy life. It will get a lot more complex, and it might happen very quickly. So I look back on the days I took spring break trips. I mean, these are the things that you should do in your youth, and even continuing on. If you have the opportunity to do that and travel and see the world, we're not getting any younger. We don't know what restrictions might look like in the years to come with different things happening, and just live in the moment and take advantage of the opportunities that present themselves to you.
Absolutely, absolutely. That was perfect. Changing what a scientist looks like, everything about that. So it was a really good story to tell. Now, before we go, I get all my guests to say this because I'm STEM Girl Swag. I created it, but you are definitely STEM Girl Swag. So to the audience, please say STEM Girl Swag.
STEM Girl Swag.
Yes. All right, now tell everybody where to find you, how to stay connected, learn more about industrial hygienists, learn more about being a chemist, and learn more about maybe getting mentoring.
Yes. So you can find me on most social media platforms. I'm on Instagram, Facebook. I do have some YouTube videos up. TikTok, although I'm probably not the hippest person on TikTok. I don't normally, know how to do all these dances. I try, but you can find me there also. It's at Classy Chemist. I also go by at Classy Chemist on some of the platforms, so you can search for either. I do also have a website, www.classychemist.com. You can learn more about me if you want to reach out to me about mentorship, about school talks, book talks, all sorts of things. There's a contact form that you could reach out to me on, and you can find out more information about me there if you want to as well.
Thank you so much for being a guest on this podcast. It was so much fun and so much learning that I got just by listening to you and asking you questions that I had. And for anybody else, if you have more questions, please find her IG's right here. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. It was so awesome hanging out with you today, Temple.
All right, guys, this was another episode of the STEM Plug podcast. Make sure you subscribe, like, and comment below. Follow me on Instagram at JustTemple. I'm your plug. I'll see you next time.